So thank you so much. I was hoping that this could just be like a conversation between the two of us. And, the first thing that I have to ask, and I'm sure you get asked this all the time, is just simply, tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got to this stage in your career, professionally and personally. We'd just love to hear a little bit more about you.
Oh, Ben, how much time do you have? This is such an open-ended question.
You take exactly as much time you need.
Well, how did I get here? I'd like to think by grace, a lot of prayers, and a little bit of hard work. But I'm originally from Omaha, Nebraska, North Omaha to be specific. And I moved from Omaha, Nebraska to Washington, D.C. in fall of 2014 because, I wanted to work in politics, like lots of young people that moved to Washington, D.C. And I will never forget, after having been here for about a month, a little bit after my 25th birthday, which was in December of 2015 or 2014, I am having lunch with one of my mentors and a woman whom I used to work with on one of the campaigns I've worked previously. And she said, "What do you want to do?" And I was like, "I want to work a presidential campaign. I, want to do politics." And she's like, "You and every other young person that moves to Washington, D.C." And she laughed. And I spoke to her about 2-3 weeks ago. We exchanged emails, and she said, "I remember the lunch that we had, and you said you wanted to work a campaign, you wanted to do presidential politics, you wanted to do politics, and you did exactly what you said you would do." So I worked 15 different campaigns before I worked my first presidential. The first presidential campaign I worked for was United States Senator Bernie Sanders when he ran for president the first time. Mm-hmm. And in between there, I was a CNN political commentator. I started a consulting company. I became what I like to call a professional fellow. I did the Harvard Fellowship Program where I had the opportunity to teach a class. I was a fellow at University of Southern California where I taught a class in spring of 2019. And in spring of 2019, I stopped all that and I went to go work for Joe Biden's presidential campaign. And now I'm here.
That's amazing. It's wild how much ground you have covered in just such a short amount of time, and you have truly, spoken your dreams into existence and live in them. And it's just, I'm honestly like honored to even be able to talk to you. So thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Well, I'm honored to sit here and chat with you. We're just having a family conversation.
Exactly.
So have at it.
Exactly. The ancestors are truly proud. I mean, it goes without saying, I know there's always challenges and barriers that exist with everything that you do, right? And so what are some of those challenges and barriers that you've had to overcome and still maybe even overcoming as we speak?
Well, Ben, I think we can all identify with the isms. And Donna Brazile, a good mentor of mine, former chair of the Democratic National Committee and former CNN political commentator. Donna Brazile was political commentating before people had jobs as political commentators. She's one of the OG commentators out there. And I remember once in 2015, 2016, I was on the phone with her and I was, you know how sometimes we young people, we complain a little bit. We've had a time, I was complaining. And I was telling Donna Brazile, I was going on and on and on, and then she interrupted me. And she basically told me, she said, "Well, if you can't handle some of the things you're telling me about at this level, perhaps this is not the job or the arena for you." Mm-hmm. And I got all buttoned up and I'm like, "Oh, she doesn't understand." And I got off the phone and I called her back a couple hours later. And she said something to me that I will never forget. And I'm gonna share it with you now because I think it is the best encapsulation of the answer to your question. She said, "Symone, racism, sexism, ageism are not going anywhere tomorrow. We have to work to eradicate it. We have to call it out when we see it. We have to combat it every single day. We have to push to make people and places and spaces better and for us. But we also have to figure out how to navigate through it. And if you cannot figure out how to navigate through the isms," she said, "because you're experiencing a lot of them at one time, you will not be successful here." And I think that we can all identify with that, whether you work in politics or business or education, whether you are just starting out at your company or whether you're an entrepreneur starting your own business. If you are if you are not a part of the original we in this country, and I say that because the preamble to the Constitution says, "We the people," in order to form a more perfect union. But when that preamble to the Constitution was wrote, the we did not include you, Ben, and it didn't include me. The we only included old, rich white men. You had to be rich and white. You just could not be white. Poor people were not included in the original we. But over time, the we has expanded. But because the we is constantly expanding, I think we also have to understand that we're going to experience challenges in whatever it is that we do. So I mean, I will never forget when I first started on the campaign in 2015, 2016, and I would travel with the senator.
Mhm.
And this was, before Secret Service and all of that. So we were just rolling around town and, Chevy Cruises. I don't even think they make the Chevy Cruise anymore, but we were rolling around town in the Chevy Cruises. And I would go ahead of Senator Sanders before he got to the event. And I would regularly go to places and venues, and I would not be able to get into the building at the staff entrance. They would say this is for staff. I would explain I am staff. We would do the whole dance, and I would have to call someone down to validate that I was who I said I was, who I said that I was, and that I deserved to be there. And one particular week, I will never forget this. Then it happened every single day, every single event, to the point where when I got to Friday, I was done. I said, look, I called up our advanced staff, the staffers that go before us and set up the events, and the people who are in charge of the Saturday event. And I say, hey guys, this is what time I'm coming tomorrow. And I'm just wondering if you could tell the people at all the checkpoints that I am bald and that I am black. And they and they laugh. They say, oh, Symone. I said, guys,
You don't
I've
get
had
it.
trouble. Okay. I've had trouble. Just please communicate that I am bald and that I am black when you tell them my name. And they tell me, okay. And so I pull up to the event the next day, and the first checkpoint, they give me a little trouble. It's a whole thing. And then I'm like, did they not tell you that I was coming? Like, did they tell you a bald black girl was coming? And they said, oh, Symone, yes, Symone Sanders. I said, yes. I pulled up to the second checkpoint, and the gentleman in the window, he opened the thing. He said, oh, they told me about you. I said, yes, sir. Did they tell you that I was bald and black? He said, yes, they did. That's how I knew. And the third checkpoint, Ben, it wasn't even a checkpoint. It was just a parking spot and had a little piece of paper, had my name right in it, like on the wall. There was a wall in front. And I pulled up, and as I was getting to get my things out of the car, two gentlemen came running up to my vehicle, yelling things I will not repeat in this conversation with you, banging on my window, but basically telling me I didn't belong there and I needed to remove myself.
Mhm.
And I broke down in my car and I started crying. And I called our staffers, and they came down and got me because I just wanted to go to work. And when I finally got upstairs into the hold room, the senator and his wife, Jane, were about 15 minutes behind me. When they finally arrived, I'm explaining the briefing about what we're going to do. And Mrs. Sanders, she stops me and she says, what is wrong, Symone? And I said, oh, sometimes I couldn't get in. And I just do the ugly cry. And I explained to Jane and Senator Sanders what I just told you. And the senator interrupts me. He says, well, why can't you get in? And Jane goes, well, racism, Bernie. And I'm like, yes, Jane, and perhaps a little ageism and sexism too. And the Senator Sanders said something that I think we all need to just internalize. And he said, well, if you can't get in, who else is being kept out of the building that we don't know about? And that is what I think about oftentimes. So we always have to think about who else is being kept out of the building. But also, I'd like to note that had I not shared my experience of being kept out of the building, the proverbial building, if you will, who knows who else would have continued to have trouble. And so I always, that and there are many other experiences seared into my brain. But I think, now obviously I walk in the rooms and not a lot of times people know who I am because I used to be on television for a while.
Mhm.
But the feeling of being other never goes away, and no matter how far you get, no matter what rooms you sit in. And I think it's always important to remember what Donna Brazile said. We have to figure out how to navigate through the isms while we are working to combat them and eradicate them.
I just appreciate you speaking such a powerful story because one, I know you laugh and joke about it now because it's it's in the past, but I don't want to miss the point that you talked about how you broke down, right? And people, I think, often don't realize that even to get into, like you said, that proverbial building, or even to get a seat at the table, the navigational Olympics and mental Olympics you have to go through as you're processing all these things, people are sort of categorizing in a type of way, right? The interesting thing about, even this conversation while we were brought together is this concept of, so now once you get into the building and once you are at the table, in your book, you talk a lot about speaking truth to power, right?
Yeah.
you went through all this stuff. You went through what? 3, 4 checkpoints, people running up on the car, all these types of questions. And you're probably going to a pretty important conversation, right? So now you're at the table. Talk to me a little bit just how you speak that truth to power, and also the concept of, how we can reclaim America by doing so.
Yes, Ben, I'm snapping for you. So my book is called No, You Shut Up, Speaking Truth to Power and Reclaiming America. And I think you asked the right question. I write a lot about being a radical revolutionary, if you will, in the book, and the spirit of folks like Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., folks like Ella Baker, Fannie Lou Hamer, and radical. I think we all need to be radical revolutionaries in our everyday spaces and places. And when I say that, I do not mean that we should all go out into the streets and be activists and, go to the die-in, because for some of us, that's not our radical revolutionary contribution. At one point, my radical revolutionary contribution was sitting on cable news panels, explaining to the people on the panels why folks are dying in. I can't be out there at the die-in, and if I need to explain it. Now my radical, exactly, everybody has a role. And so now I have a different radical revolutionary contribution. You have a radical revolutionary contribution. We all have to figure out what that is in our spaces and places. But if we really want to be true radical revolutionaries in the spirit of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., in the spirit of Fannie Lou Hamer and Ella Baker and so on and so forth, then that means we have to be willing to take risks. Mm-hmm. We have to be willing to take stock of who is not at the proverbial table. We have to be willing to take on, as I like to say, our adversaries as well as our allies. That is what we need to do when we're in our spaces and places, experiencing and giving our radical revolutionary contribution. And I think taking on our adversaries as well as our allies is a really important point, because Ben, we're all ready to take on our adversaries. We are ready, to walk into the office with so-and-so who we are just waiting to push that one button on our nerve to let them know. Okay, I'm waiting on, Jane Doe or Tony to say that one thing. So I can be like, Tony, let me tell you something. Tony, if I can just, let me be clear. Mm-hmm. But our allies, our friends, the person we really like at work, our sorority sisters, our fraternity brothers, those are the people that we also have to be willing to hold accountable, the people we need to be willing to push back on, the people we need to be willing to challenge to do things that have not been done before. And that's the same thing when we are sitting at the highest levels in these spaces and places of power. We have to be willing to speak that truth. We have to be willing to challenge folks. I encourage people to find your personal and professional line. There are just some things you cannot say nor do in my presence, no matter who you are, no matter where I am. And I know what my line is, and I also know what my actions are when my personal or professional line is crossed. We all have to get that line, and we have to get these values, if you will, that anchor us. Because we're all going to be faced with that moment. One of my moments was when someone literally told me to shut up on national television. And I wanted to, keep my job, but I also wanted to communicate that the way in which you were speaking to me is not appropriate, nor is it okay. And I am not going to let that happen. And so I really think that this moment that we're in really requires us to be introspective, but think about what is our radical revolutionary contribution? Think about, how are we gonna do things differently to further our causes? And it sounds high level, and I might make it seem like it's so easy, and it's not easy. It's not easy to challenge your folks at work or on the committee or your colleagues. It's not easy, but it is necessary. And we have to think about the necessary work that is required in order to move the ball forward in whatever it is that we're doing.
Absolutely. And so just as I listen to you, so many things just resonate just from personal experience. But, we've all had that experience of you're in the car on the way to work, or even it starts in the shower and you replay that conversation. You like, look, they got one more time. If they just say it, I'm just going to wait for them. And you get yourself sized up and you get yourself riled up. And so then a lot of times when you're in those conversations, you can't even pay attention to maybe what's going on because you're so emotionally invested in it. Because this work that we're doing is so emotional, and it's so personal. I think that's the thing that people sometimes don't realize at these tables and these conversations is, you're so emotionally invested in it that when you walk away, you don't get to turn it off. You don't get to turn this light for conversation off.
Ben, this is such a good point though, because what you're saying, a lot of times, I remember when I was growing up, people used to tell me to find my passion and then find the thing that I can make like money to do. Like, what is your job? And then you have to find your passion. Well, I am fortunate that the thing that I'm passionate about is also the thing that I get paid to do. You know, politics, strategy work, like that is how I pay like I'm personally passionate about it. I believe in this, but it's also how to pay my bills. So I think that in nowadays there are so many people, because of the folks that came before us, that we have the opportunity for our passion work to be also the thing that helps us sustain our lives. We have to, like, we have meshed the two, and every people have found their dream jobs, but we also have to understand that that comes with, yes, our emotional investment, but we still need to be able to do the work. At the end of the day, we have to do the work, whatever the work is, it has to be accomplished, and conflicts will arise. You know, we are living in times where everybody is doing equity work nowadays. It's all everyone, you know, equity is the new diversity. Okay, we're all invested in equity, but how are we truly making sure that while we're invested in this equity work, we're creating equitable workspaces across the board, depending on whatever it is we do, that we're having equitable conversations, that we are challenging ourselves and one another. And I think that that is the necessary thing we have to dig deep and find in our everyday spaces and places.
Absolutely. And you're right. DEI is the new, every organization has it. School districts are using it. Institutions of higher ed, universities, you know, diversity, equity, inclusion offices, organizations, supervisors. It's wonderful to see that people are pushing this thought. So what is, with those types of organizations in place, those types of structures, what would you recommend to individuals who work in those spaces in terms of how, like you said, to make sure that their environments are inclusive, that they are not putting up barriers at the different checkpoints so people that look a certain type of way are put into another category, and that their voices are actually heard at the table when they arrive?
I think when we are, if we really want to create more equitable and enjoyable workplaces and spaces and environments, and really apply the work that we're doing across the board, then we have to understand that this work cannot be siloed off. And so if you have a DEI, as the folks are calling it, diversity, equity, and inclusion, or inclusive, whatever the acronym folks are using right now in their various organizations or groups, it is really important that that work is not siloed off over here to the right, and then everybody else is doing their pods and operating in the left and up the middle and down. We have to ensure that it is applied across the board, so that you are, you know, DE&I work doesn't just apply, you know, during Women's History Month, Hispanic Heritage Month, and Black History Month. Like, what are we doing 365 days a year, 7 days a week, to ensure that what we are creating, what we are activating in, if we are, whether we are a school district or a nonprofit organization or so on and so forth, to make sure that we are taking account of every single vantage point in person on the front end. And I'm always a juvenile justice advocate, but I'm a former chair of a national coalition for juvenile justice, Young and Emerging Leaders Committee. And the approach that we took to our juvenile justice reform work was ensuring, I talked about, we were all about bringing millennial perspectives to policy conversations. And we really pushed to ensure that those perspectives were included on the front end. So if we're going to talk about reforming the juvenile justice system and alternatives to detention, we are asking young people who are formerly system involved or even currently system involved, i.e. young people who have had a brush or touch in the system, we're going to ask them on the front end what we should do, not on the back end after we've all figured it out and gotten to the room and we bring the young people in for the photo op. That's the same thing for our DE&I work. We have to ensure that we're asking these questions on the front end across the board in our organizations and entities, not waiting until the end or siloing it off in a corner.
And it can't be an afterthought.
No, it's a first thought. It's
right,
a first
right.
thought.
It is throughout. But so I say I'm running an organization. This is hypothetical. You know, why should I listen to these young millennials, persons of color? Like, why should I listen to them? Like, I know what I need to do. Like, I've got an MBA, you know, I've gone through the Ivy League schools. Why should I listen to, you know, this young cat over here telling me a new perspective?
Well, look, I will just say this. I don't think that there's a better time in this world to be a young person with an idea, to be a young person with ambition, to be a young person with the hunger to create and give something to this world. And young people across the board are being disproportionately affected by everything that's happening now. We're in the midst of a global pandemic that has created an economic crisis and a public health crisis simultaneously. There are multiple crises out there: a climate crisis, crisis of racial injustice. We can go down the line. A hunger crisis is currently exploding all across our country. So it is young people who will have to deal with the ramifications of the decisions that are being made right now. It is young people who have the ability to not just contribute to your ideas, but really to the workforce. And so if we really want to create an environment, products, whatever it is that appeals to this demographic, that are sustainable, that are marketable right now, why don't we ask the people who are directly connected to the issue? I often, when I was doing the juvenile justice work, I would say, I don't think we would ever say we need to, there's something wrong with this building, and not ask the people in the building how we should fix the issue.
Right.
No one would ever come to the building and not include the people who live in the building to tell them what, or at least the people who own the building, and talk to them about the issue in the building. And so why, when we're talking about reforming the juvenile justice system, for example, are we not talking to the kids in the system? The young people have been through the system, same thing. So whatever it is, who you at whatever organization, the young people have something to contribute. But let me speak to the young people, okay? Young people, we do not know it all now. We don't know it all. And I think that, we have been told for such a really long time that if we just put our minds to it and dream big and we can do anything we want, we can knock down doors and barriers. And what does Shirley Chisholm say? If there's no seat at the table, bring a folding chair. And yes, all that is true. I believe, actually, if there's no seat at the table, sometimes they won't let you in the room. So you got to peer through the peephole. You might have to run around the back door, bust the window out, jump through, and drag your folding chair up to the table and ask what you missed. But you also, young people, we have to be willing to listen. We have to be willing to ask questions. We have to be open to constructive criticism and feedback and mentorship, because it is really going to take an intergenerational approach to combat all of these issues, these crises, a few of them that I just named. It's going to take an intergenerational approach. I think young people's perspectives are important because they're fresh. You can see from a different vantage point. If you've been in it for a while, it's hard for you to see another angle, but there's something we like to call institutional knowledge. And institutional knowledge is extremely important. A mentor of mine often says history is unbroken continuity. And it is true. It is absolutely true. And so we have to know where we've been. We have to understand what hasn't worked and what has worked to figure out where we're going and to take it to the next level.
And the thing that I just appreciate so much is how you were speaking from just experience. Yeah, I can just from the story you told at the beginning to even now, this advice and sort of guidance you're giving to you're reaching back and pulling them, right? Just like others did for you, for me. It's just powerful, and it does take that approach. It's also interesting, like I feel like you and I are part of the same generation, right? We had that same thing growing up, like you got to go to college, you got 4 years, like you got to get a GPA, you got to be National Honor Society, and we did all those things, right? But I think times are shifting to where there's other opportunities. Could you speak to me a little bit more? I know part of the work that you are involved in now is an apprenticeship program in the community colleges and other routes to have these different pathways for students. Because I'm a former teacher in DC and Charlottesville, and I still work with youth now. And that's my passion. And like you said, I get paid to do that, and it's very unique to be able to do that. So can you talk to me a little bit about that apprenticeship concept?
I think we have to, just like you said, expand pathways for young people and the young at heart to achieve success. We have to talk about expanded pathways. A 4-year university is not the only way to be successful in the United States of America nowadays. There are apprenticeship programs, there are trade programs. Guess what? There are entrepreneurs out there. The tech space is growing, the gig economy, an overwhelming number of young people in this country are members of the gig economy. And so that is, and a lot of the things that those folks know that, the work that they do, you cannot learn from a textbook in a classroom. You have to learn it from your experience. And so what I really believe is that we have to invest in a number of these programs. You know, when I was in high school, I'm from Omaha, Nebraska, North Omaha, go Big Red. And there is a program with the community college where high school students could enroll in this program, and you could earn college credits while you were still in high school if you went to these classes on Saturday. And by the time you graduated, you would have the first 2 years, if depending on where you started, the first 2 years of college done. Your core classes out of the way. Like, those are the kind of programs we should, and they provided for apprenticeship and trade opportunities. Like, we had technical school, some of the best paying jobs. Okay, some of the people I know, entrepreneurs that are flourishing, that are doing the best, are plumbers, are contractors, are electricians. Hello, the real estate, real estate is booming. People need electricians and plumbers and contractors if they're gonna flip these houses. Like, we have to connect the moment to the opportunity here, folks. So I truly, truly believe that we have to speak about expanded pathways to success. And I'm just really excited that so many people out there are embracing that.
Mm-hmm. And because the pathway, some of the things you were talking about, when you say flourishing, you know, that leads to just economic opportunity. What is the intersectionality there with some of these pathways and a pathway to economic and or wealth gaining?
I mean, a lot of nowadays folks are talking about, we hear a lot about green jobs, right? For example. Well, green jobs are also good paying union jobs. If we're gonna, more solar panels and folks going solar means that we need more contractors to install the solar panels. If we're talking about electric cars, that means we need people to make the cars. That means we need folks to install charging stations. If we're talking about investing in, infrastructure, if we're talking about building up our railroads and speedways, those are construction jobs. My brother owns his own construction company. And so I know about the gutting of the homes, and he has an electrician and a plumber on deck. Right. These are, I really just think that there is so much opportunity in the future, and the conversations that so many of us are having right now are talking about, the world of high tech and, a high tech future, and how we have to be connected to technology, and all of that is absolutely true. But none of these things that we are talking about are going to happen without some of these very technical, skilled worker jobs that are never going away in the near future, in my opinion. And so we often talk a lot about broadband, for example. We were trying to set up our stuff before you and I got on, and we're having technical issues. Okay, well, if we talk about expanding broadband, someone's gonna have to build those lines so we can get broadband in rural and urban places all across this country. Those are jobs that we have to ensure that we're talking to our young people about. And I am just, my brother has 2 small children, and his son often comes with him when he's doing these jobs. And that is what we have to do. What the 100 Black Men has a motto that says, what they see is what they'll be. And he is literally demonstrating to his son, showing his son that this is Daddy has a good job, that he works with his hands and he can contribute, and you can do this too. And Daddy's an entrepreneur. So I think these are all different avenues. Can I say one other thing before we go? I know you're probably going to, I felt like you're trying to wrap me, Ben. So I just want to say one other thing.
I would never cut you off. I could stay here all night. I'm over here taking notes.
Can I say one other thing? I think that this entire conversation for me boils down to folks thinking about ways to do the things that have not been done before. And I always try to always make sure I leave a conversation with this lesson, and then I have a little poem. But I really think back to when I first moved to DC. I'm sitting in my office. I was working for a trade organization. I knew nothing about trade. Okay, it was crazy. Consumer advocacy think tank. I was like, I know nothing here. And I worked there for about 6 months, and I was like, I need a new job. I came here to do politics. I ended up going on 27 interviews. I interviewed everywhere in the city. No one hired me. They all told me I spoke very well. I was very engaging. I dressed very nice. I know we know, Ben, we know, but they weren't going to hire me. A couple of days after my 27th interview, I get a cold call on my cell phone, and it is Jeff Weaver, Bernie Sanders in campaign manager offering, saying he wants me to work there. I end up talking to Jeff. I then have another meeting with the communications director. Then I hear nothing. So I've been on 29 interviews. Nobody's hired me. I kid you not. 2 weeks later, I get a cold call on my cell phone and somebody saying that Bernie Sanders wants to meet you in his office. I go, I meet with Senator Sanders. We get in an argument. I'm like, I'm not getting this job. We though reconcile at the end. And I will never forget. He says, you know, kid, I like you. I said, I like you too, sir. He said, I think I want you to work here. I said, I think I want to work here too. And he says, well, do you have an idea what you'd like to do? And no one had asked me that before, but I answered very quickly. I said, yes, sir. I would like to be your national press secretary. I want to be your on the record spokesperson. And I want to have a hand in your messaging strategy. And he just kind of looked at me like this. And he said, well, have you ever done cable television before? And I said, no, sir. But I do believe I would be very good at it. And he laughed. And I was like, he is not about to hire me. And that was a Thursday. On a Tuesday, Jeff Weaver calls me back and he starts talking about a phone and a laptop. And he said, the senator really liked me. And I said, well, sir, what is my job title going to be? And he was like, national press secretary. And I say that to say that had I not had an answer to the question, because everybody doesn't have like a sitting United States senator, right, that's about to run for president,
right.
Or the opportunity to sit before them. But I believe we all have a moment like that, where we are faced with the question, and do we have an answer? I call it like you're like, what do you want for dinner question. We all, and you're like, oh, I don't know. What do you want? No, you know what you want for dinner. You might want ice cream. Okay, you might want steak. You might want to go to that real fancy restaurant down the street, but you don't think that's an option right now.
Right.
What do you want for dinner? You know what you want for dinner. Just say what you want for dinner, because you might end up getting it. We all, instead of shooting for the stars, we shoot for the thing right up under the stars, because we're afraid that we're not going to be given the thing that we really want. Right. And we need to start asking for the things that we know that we've worked for, the thing that we want. We need to be willing to do the things that we haven't been done before. And had I not been willing to do the things that hadn't been done before, we would not be sitting here having this conversation today. So I will end with this, Ben. I'm going to leave you with a poem, okay, that I have. If anyone's heard me before, they've heard this poem a number of times. I learned it in the 4th grade, and it is very applicable to right now what I'm saying. So I want people to listen up, okay? It's called The Things That Haven't Been Done Before. It's by Edgar Guest. And Ben, I will say, it mentions Christopher Columbus, and it's a problem for me because the only Christopher I like to acknowledge is Christopher Wallace.
There we go.
However, okay, it's the only Christopher I celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day, but this is a very good poem and it gets the point across. It's The Things That Haven't Been Done Before by Edgar Guest. The things that haven't been done before, those are the things to try. Columbus dreamed of an unknown shore at the rim of a far-flung sky. Though his heart was bold and his faith was strong as he ventured to dangers new, he paid no heed to the jeering throng or the fears of the doubting crew. Many will follow the beaten path with guideposts along the way. They live and have lived for ages back with a chart for every day. Someone has told them it's safe to go on the road they have traveled, and all they ever strive to know are the things that were known before. But few will strike out without map or chart. Whenever a man or woman has been from the beaten path, they draw apart to see what no man or woman has seen. There are deeds they hunger alone to do, though bruised and battered and sore. They blaze a trail for many who do nothing not done before. The things that haven't been done before are the tasks worthwhile today. Are you one of the flock that follow? Or are you one that shall lead the way? Ben, are you one of the timid souls that quail the jeers of a shouting crew? Or dare you, whether you win or fail, strike out for goal this new?
I appreciate you. This has been an incredible conversation, and
Thank
I hope
you.
everyone who is viewing it has gotten as much out of it as I have, because I'm just excited to see the things you're doing, the things that you are going to do, the things that you have literally spoken into existence. You know, wherever your path you want it to be, I hope you get there. And you know, if it's press secretary, I'm looking forward to just listening to all the good information that you're going to be giving out to everyone, and you know, just people that can see you right now. You know, our young Black females right now that are watching, like you said it, like the 100 Black men always say, like what they see is what they be, and you truly are an inspiration. And you know, we just really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ben. Well, I appreciate you. I will come back and chat anytime. Let's do the work.
Absolutely.
Talk to you soon.
I hope to see you in Charlottesville.
Absolutely. Let me just say, I love Charlottesville. Wes Bellamy, Dr. Wes Bellamy, let me make sure I use his credentials because he will get on people without putting the doctor in there, is one of my good friends. He is my brother. I have been to Charlottesville more times than I ever imagined I would be. So Charlottesville is a place of resilient people, some good, young, talented people of
Yeah, well,
color, some good, talented Black people. So hold me to it.
yeah, I'm gonna get with Wes next time you come through.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, I'll see you soon.
Take care.
Bye.